you literally didn't know if the next city might be this amazing place that had everything you dreamed of. It might not, but it might. You just didn't know. There wasn't any way to tell other than to go there, and so there was this this urgency that I had to explore these, which were unknown to me, and encounter who knows what.
It's hard to grapple with the scope of the life of a person like Kevin Kelly. His life has diversity, depth, and daring. He determined his own path. He has wandered the world pursuing the kind of odd and unusual experiences that he wanted to experience. So, Kevin Kelly is a traveler, an innovator, a self educated maverick, a disruptor of assumptions and premises. He embraces contradictions and paradoxes. He's willing to take leaps of faith, to surrender to experience, to surrender to chance, and to surrender to the joy of serendipity. His history shows him to be logical, inquiring, and clear minded without being shackled by conventions. Kevin Kelly balances both a minimal immersion in technology and a deep exploration of the new wave of digital technology. Born in 1952, over his life, he has both immersed himself in technology and deliberately kept some mental distance from it. In his childhood and young adult up to his late 20s, he had opted out of the technology of the time. In his early 30s, he started to explore the new technologies, calling them another frontier, in his own words, as if it were an exotic travel destination. In his 1940s, in his 40s, he helped to create Wired magazine. In the last few years, he is publishing books and doing interviews that distill the wisdom he has learned from living life on his own terms. In his early 20s, Kevin Kelly set out to photograph vanishing cultures. He traveled to deserts and to remote mountain villages in the Malaysian peninsula in China. He spent almost 50 years off and on, beginning in the 1970s, photographing these cultures. He visited Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Iran, Turkey, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Thailand, China, Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tibet, Myanmar, Malaysia, remote Indonesian villages, Mongolia, and the fringes of the Himalayas. From those wanderings, in 2022, he published 3 volumes of his 9,000 photographs from 35 countries. In 1993, he was one of the founders of Wired magazine and its first executive editor. Wired magazine is an innovative and groundbreaking magazine that looks at society through the lens of culture and digital technology. A magazine much of its time, like Rolling Stone magazine was a groundbreaking magazine of its time in 1967, a magazine which looked at society through the culture of rock music. Kevin Kelly's book on technology, called What Technology Wants, is well worth reading. He collected the wisdom of the ages in a book of aphorisms he published in 2023 called Excellent Advice for the Living, Wisdom I Wish I'd Known Earlier. He also published a gem of a book of his sketches called Bad Dreams, published in 1994 and 2003. Kevin Kelly is married to a biochemist, and they have 3 children. It must be an interesting marriage. One way to explore the world is to marry someone from another culture. Kevin Kelly wouldn't have met by chance his wife, who is from Taiwan, if she hadn't taken a leap of faith to come to the US to complete her education, and she wouldn't have married him if she had not taken another leap of faith. That's just a brief biography. The incentive for this diverse life of an innovator, of the exploration of people, culture, and the world sounds like a lesson in curiosity. Let's find out. Kevin Kelly, you are a great traveler. Odysseus only wandered for 8 years. You have wandered for a large portion of your life. You've wandered geographically through different cultures, through different technologies, through different ideas. You sought out what is different, what is other, what lies on the fringes and the borderlands. Even your pursuit of knowledge about technology was crossing new boundaries. You sought a diversity of experiences. You started a number of new enterprises. You visited people in remote locations, distant from cities, distant from city culture, distant from technology. You married a woman from Taiwan, from a different culture. These wanderings are manifestations of curiosity. Wandering can be an exposure to uncertainty, and that uncertainty would make some people nervous, but apparently not you. So, my question is, in the people you've met in your travels, did you form an impression of what their sense of curiosity was like in those conditions? Who were the most curious? What have you learned from the curiosity of others?
First of all, thank you for having me and for that very flattering introduction. I'm not sure I'm worthy of all that, but I am really delighted to be here. Let me see if I can answer your question about curiosity. I think you're right that is something that underpins a lot of what I have done in my life. It was never, I don't think I ever heard the word in school. It was never a skill that we were taught or trained to exercise. I think I was curious and I think I was trying to optimize my curiosity, but it was not deliberate in the sense that I didn't know what I was doing. Looking back, I see that it was really fundamentally curiosity. And if I examine the people in my lives, the ones that were most influential on me as an adult were definitely those who were most curious in their own lives. While I was traveling, it was clear that some people were very curious and others not. I mean, I am obviously in any of the places I went to many years ago, obviously a foreigner, obviously an intruder, obviously someone not from that area. And it is remarkable the different degrees in which people were curious about that, some much more than others. And I think it's possible for people to kind of live a life without curiosity because they aren't really expecting very much in terms of they might emphasize their family and their routines and things. But for some reason, I was very interested in the frontier, making things that were valuable. And their curiosity is just essential. It's the only way I think that you arrive at that difference, the new, the novel, the innovation. And there, you absolutely have to be curious all the time. And um, for some reason, that was that was the area, that frontier, that edge, that boundary between what we know and what we don't know, between what's here now and what's over the hill, between what the past is and what the future is going to bring. That was where I wanted to live. And the travel was an easy way to encounter that boundary, to encounter that difference. And when I dropped out of college and set out to travel, thought I was signing up for a life of poverty, because the way I was taught that you got ahead was you went to college. And so not going to college was sort of saying, okay, I'm not going to have a career. I won't really be involved in this um, edge of greatness. But it turned out actually that inadvertently, the source of innovation and the wealth around innovation all happened at the very moment where you were thinking differently, when you were having a different idea, when you were going in a different path than everyone else. And that turned out to be exactly the right thing to do, which was be, to be curious, to explore the other the other ways of doing things, whether they were existing in a land or whether you were going to invent them in your own mind or whether you're going to encounter them in a subculture or whatever. The idea of thinking different became the engine of a lot of what we're seeing in the change and the progress that we have right now. And so but by not choosing the kind of regular path, by going somewhere and exploring my own curiosity without any kind of regard about whether it was going to be profitable. I was not thinking profitably. I was not um, trying to calculate my productivity, my success rate. But it turned out that path of not going that way was actually the best way to have success, was to divert and go a different way. And so I would say I was very lucky, because by pursuing my own interests, by being my own curiosity, I kind of wound up successful. But it wasn't really what I was aiming for.
Hmm. Um, you have a real traveling spirit, um, a real explorer spirit. Have you been doing this kind of exploration since you were a child? How did this happen? Uh,
Yeah,
Part of your character? Did this ability develop or change as you got older?
it didn't come as a kid very much. I would say that we, like a lot of people my age, were free range kids. I was one of five kids, all within 5 years. My mom would shoo us out the door in the summer and come back for dinner. And we had bicycles, which we would ride as far as we could. And we had a woods that I would spend an incredible amount of time exploring and making stuff in. I made bows and arrows and stuff all on my own. And then there was some a little bit of industry, and I would explore some of the debris and trash kind of. We didn't have dumpsters, but it was equivalent to dumpster diving, where I took out stuff that I would assemble, junk, things like that. So I did explore to the little bit that I could in my neighborhood under my own power. My family did not believe in vacations. My dad didn't believe in vacations. We didn't travel at all, like once or twice during before I left high school. So I almost had no travel experience before I set off to the first long trip to Taiwan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, to visit my high school friend who was studying Chinese there. And that just blew my mind on so many levels. Not having been out of the United States, not having been out of New England, not having ever eaten Chinese food. I mean, it was all so new and wonderful. And it was like going to another planet. It was really like going to another planet. And then once that happened, there was just this sort of trickling awareness, this kind of dim idea that, oh, there's a lot to see here. It's like you go to Japan, so I needed to renew my visa. Took a ferry to Korea. Needed to renew my visa in Taiwan. Flew to $100 to go to the Philippines, and it was like all of a sudden there were there's always another place next door that you haven't been to. So that compulsion, it took hold of me. So it was a compulsion to it's like they talk about the fear of missing out. It was something similar to that. The fear of missing the next thing. There could be something amazing over that next hill. And again, the lack of information was part of it because I just didn't know. I mean, you literally didn't know if the next city might be this amazing place that had everything you dreamed of. It might not, but it might. You just didn't know. There wasn't any way to tell other than to go there, and so there was this mm, this urgency that I had to explore these, which were unknown to me, and encounter who knows what. Oftentimes it was boring. Oftentimes it was like not that interesting. But the next place might be. It was kind of like, like gambling in that sense of like, okay, today I didn't really learn much, but tomorrow there's another place and that might even be better. And so that sense of the eternally receding Shangri-La was part of how I got going from that first hit. It was, it wasn't quite an addiction, but it was like getting really high on the first one, and just say, this is amazing. I'm going to do more. I'm going to find another place. This is amazing. I'm comfortable with not knowing what will happen ahead. Uh, and I later on traveled with my two daughters who were 8 and 10 at the time, and we headed to China for the first time. I had never been there. I had no idea what was happening, but now I had my two young daughters to take care of. And we headed off, and then we eventually headed into Tibet and had literally no map, knew nothing. I found a guy, a Tibetan, who had a pickup truck, and we were just driving into oftentimes where there were no roads, just driving in directions to see what was going to be there. And that was, yes, that was a deliberate choice to head into a place where I didn't know what would happen.